welcome back to another episode of Empower Your Menopause, the podcast where we talk about health, hormones and happiness for women 40 and above. It's James here with Julie from Fabulous Beyond 40, and today we're talking about a really super important subject. We're talking about bones. We're going to talk about why osteoporosis risk spikes in midlife and what you can do to keep your skeleton going strong and supportive for many, many decades to come. Julie, why don't you tell us why we chose this and why it's such an important subject really for everybody, right? For all women over the age of 40.
Absolutely. And here's the blunt truth, scary truth. According to statistics, there's research by the British Menopause Society and many other global entities that has shown that about 1 in every 2 women over 50 is going to break a bone because of osteoporosis. And that's quite alarming. But the good news is it isn't necessarily your destiny. Okay, we do have some control over this. We hear something that bothers me a little bit. We often hear from women who have been through the crux of their menopause journey. So they're past the menopause day. Most of their strong symptoms have subsided, and they feel like they're past it, or they tell us, oh, I don't need to worry about that anymore. I'm through it already. But because they think they're finished with it. And this couldn't be further from the truth, which is why we want to talk about this today, especially. We're not trying to scare you, but the reality is that your health risks start increasing more rapidly in postmenopause, and bone mineral density is one of the most serious issues because health outcomes of women who experience a fracture related to osteoporosis are pretty dismal. So this really can have a major impact on your independence as you go through later in life, your health span, and even your lifespan. The reason being because estrogen is normally protecting our bones until we hit that menopause day when that estrogen production falls off a cliff. So our levels fluctuate in perimenopause, drop in postmenopause, and then what happens is there are two forces at work: the cells that build bone and the ones that clean bone and break down bone. And the ones that break down bone can start outpacing the ones that build our bones. So when we think about that natural happening, and then we add in our sedentary lifestyles, the gaps we have in our nutrition, stress, as we always say, is the biggest enemy of women in menopause. You've got the perfect recipe for bone loss. So the flip side is that your bones are going to respond to what you do most days. So that means there are lots of real, very doable steps that you can take to keep them strong. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to you, James, for some of the bone basics.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that most people don't realize about bone, and I certainly didn't before I started studying this kind of stuff and got into health coaching, is that bone is not static, right? It's a living, growing tissue. And so it doesn't stay static throughout our lives. And as Julie skirted over before, our bones are actually constructed and deconstructed, and that growth takes place, that non-stasis takes place due to 2 types of cell. So they're called osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Now, osteoblasts are the ones that build bone. If you want an easy way to remember that, it's got the B in there. B for build. And then osteoclasts are the one that clear away bone. So C for clearing away. So literally what happens over the course of our lifetime is that our bones are constantly, osteoclasts are clearing some of the old rubbish away, and osteoblasts are building new, fresh bones. So our bones are always nice and strong, and that tissue is always living. So with that, when that remodeling is happening, that's absolutely fine, right? Once bits of the bone has outlived its usefulness, it's replaced by new tissue that forms in the place. As Julie said as well, when perimenopause hits and then menopause hits, of course, perimenopause, estrogen starts to go up and down like crazy. The closer you head towards the day of menopause, remember 12 months after your last period, when estrogen production is deemed to be so low that it doesn't really help do anything anymore, then estrogen's protective effect over many, many of a female's body functions stops. It starts to wane. And that is true of blood sugar balance. It's true of heart health. Both subjects that we've covered in past podcasts. Feel free to go back and listen to those if you want. A nice little plug there for some past episodes. But also, when it comes to bones, it's really, really important. So estrogen, as well as providing all those sex functions and things that we know it does, it also has a protective effect over other things, and that protective effect stops. What happens there then, as Julie said, that balance of building versus clearing actually gets thrown out of balance and out of whack. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything about it, though. Osteoporosis is not something that just happens as you get older. I mean, it is a product of aging, that is true, but it doesn't happen inherently. There are ways that you can help fight this. So it might help to think more of your bones as like a bank balance rather than them being a concrete, immovable force. So there are several things that can help stimulate the building of new bone even after estrogen's protective effects have dropped. And they are things like weight-bearing activity. So just walking around is one really good thing. So walking a lot, but also strength training. So if you think about it as a bank balance, weight-bearing activity and strength training are going to add into that balance. And then the fall in estrogen that we've both talked about, plus other lifestyle factors, nutrient deficiencies, smoking, alcohol. Some people postulate that coffee or caffeine may have an effect as well, plus the effect of estrogen. They all are things that withdraw from the bank account. So we need to keep adding into that bank account. So we need to keep strength training, and walking is the basic thing that we're talking about here. But if you want to keep your bones healthy, you need to lift some weights. Julie's going to dive into that a little bit more and tell us about the fascinating, or what I think is a fascinating physiological process, but also has a fascinating name. It's called Wolff's Law. Julie, tell us what that is.
Yeah. I love this because Wolff, spelled with two F's, is named after a 19th century German anatomist. His name was Julius Wolff. There's the Julie in there. That's probably what attracted me. He found that bone tissue adapts to the stress that's placed on it. So, in other words, as James was saying, bones aren't fixed and static. They're living tissue that remodels over time depending on how you use them. So if you put stress on bone through weight-bearing activity or resistance training, for example, or even jumping up and down, the bone is going to respond by increasing density and strength. Your body is basically saying, oh, we need to handle this load, so we better reinforce the structure that needs to handle it. If you don't put stress on bone, and I'm talking about our current sedentary lifestyle, long-term bed rest, even astronauts in zero gravity have serious issues with this. Bones lose density because they aren't needed as much. So the body is going to conserve resources because it's very practical like that, and it will weaken whatever isn't being used. So that whole use it or lose it isn't just a fun catchy phrase to throw around. It is literally how bone biology works. So some interesting things that have been found is like a tennis player's serving arm often has more dense bones than the non-dominant arm. People who lift weights regularly have stronger hips and spines compared to those who don't. And of course, falls and hip fractures are one of the most dangerous things for women in postmenopause and later in life, because the 1-year survival rate of a fall and a hip fracture is very low. Even older adults who keep doing things like walking, gardening, doing any kind of light resistance work. It could be carrying the groceries, walking up and down the stairs. It doesn't have to be going to the gym all the time, but they retain more bone density than their sedentary peers. And, just to qualify the term sedentary, even those of us who spend an hour a day or 45 minutes a day doing a weight strength training workout or resistance workouts doesn't necessarily mean that we're active, right? Because if we're sitting the whole rest of that day, that hour is a very small percentage of our time spent doing activities. So getting up and moving around during the day as much as you can makes a huge difference. It's one of the reasons why in menopause, again, when estrogen drops and bone loss accelerates, we say movement is medicine. So resistance, weight bearing training, carrying things around, climbing stairs, all send signals to your body to say, keep our bones strong.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I think you've got an example, haven't you, of one of our old clients who actually saw this in practice, Julie.
yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I remember when we first started working together, one of the first things out of her mouth was, by the way, don't, I hate weightlifting. Don't make me lift weights. I'd rather do yoga. I'd rather do Pilates. I'd rather do whatever else I can. I said, okay, that's no problem. I'm not going to force you to do activities you don't enjoy, because that's important that you enjoy what you do so you keep doing it. I said, but I'll challenge you to give these workouts a try for 2 weeks. And at the end of 2 weeks, if you don't like them, if you're not feeling a difference, then go on about your way, pick your activity, and we'll just go from there. Not only did she fall in love with those workouts, but she set up a home gym as well, because it's become such an integral part of her life. And she was recently, well, a few years ago, battling breast cancer and made a tremendous recovery. And a lot of it, she and her doctors attributed to the level of strength and fitness that she had going into her surgeries. So she loves it and is back at it again. You know, as soon as the doctors gave her the clearance, she went straight back to that, because she knows how much better she feels and how much better her health is
Yeah.
because of
What
it.
what kind of movements did you plan for her then? What kind of stuff did you put into her program?
We did basic simple movements. We're talking about functional movements, right? The things that we do, the way we move our bodies every day on a daily basis. So squat, hinge, pushing, pulling, gait. And we started with, I call metabolic conditioning workouts. So they're a mixture of sort of strength and cardio. We started with body weight, and then we progressed to using dumbbells or bands, and doing biceps curls and triceps extensions and squats, and doing compound movements to make them more efficient, so you can get more muscles worked at the same time. So like a squat or a lunge with a biceps curl, that kind of thing. And they were very simple. Again, we're not talking about, you don't have to go buy a Smith machine and a barbell and all sorts of, safety belts and whatever, hundreds and hundreds of kilos of weight. You can start very simple, use what you've got, and just focus on those simple movements. Because certainly for me as well, I found that when I started doing functional strength training, I was able to do things around the house much more easily, and I still can. Even at 61, I can do things that I see a lot of other women my age can't do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. And of course, there are a lot of nutritional things that you can add in as well onto the weight bearing exercise. When it comes to weight bearing exercise, absolutely concur with what Julie was just saying. The one thing I would say is that you need to be progressing constantly. So you either need to be
yeah,
lifting heavier or lifting more. So if you do start a weight training regime, and if you want some help on starting one, come to us and we can help you out with that.
mm-hmm.
You need to have progression in there, because your bones will adapt. And once they've adapted, as Julie said, they start getting lazy again a little bit. So we need to keep stimulating
Yeah.
them in ways. How can we stimulate them from a nutrition point of view then? Because I touched on that previously. So the key nutrients that we're looking at really then are calcium, vitamin D, vitamin K, magnesium, protein. It's kind of the most of vitamin D. As a reminder, vitamin D is not something that you find a lot of in food. Our body tends to make vitamin D through sunlight, sort of like 15, 20 minutes of exposure before the UV levels get too high to sunlight. Then your body will produce it through your skin. Where is that a challenge for most of us? Well, it's a challenge if you are non-white Caucasian. If you're Indian or you're black, then you've got uh, your skin color actually stops the sun absorbing more, so you need to be out for a little bit longer. If you live in the north of England like I do, and we're heading into winter now and the days are getting shorter and the sky is constantly grey, then you're going to get less and less vitamin D from sun exposure. So what do we do in those cases? We might want to revert to actually supplementing The NHS here in the UK recommends that most adults supplement through the winter. Vitamin D is fat soluble, so it's not like vitamin B and vitamin C that you actually wash out of your body with water, because they're water soluble ones. So it does hang around. So if you build up a nice deposit during the summer, that will last you until maybe November, December, maybe early January. After that, you probably need to start thinking about supplementing. Where would you start off supplementing? Probably around 1,000 IU a day, maybe up to 5,000 or even 10,000. It's really, really interesting if you do a vitamin D test. And I recommend you do one. I think they're £32 here in the UK, about $50 in the US. It's a really simple finger prick test that you can do, and you can assess your vitamin D levels and actually change the dose according to what that test is showing you. It's something that I think most of us should be doing in January, February anyway, as long as we can afford to do it. If not, supplement a high quality vitamin D. You will find some supplements that have got vitamin D in them also have that backup vitamin K. Why are they both important? Well, they help us absorb the second, or the nutrient I mentioned first, calcium. So calcium, we tend to think it comes from dairy. It's really, really important for strong bones. You get a lot of calcium from your diet, usually as long as you're eating good quality food. We tend to think that calcium means dairy, right? That's what we've been taught to believe here in the West. Milk, yogurt, all that kind of stuff. And yes, there is calcium in there, but then you've also got things like beans and lentils and greens and nuts and foods high in protein. Many of those all, except for the protein, the others all have high calcium levels. So really, really important. Supplementation of calcium, unless you've actually been diagnosed with a bone challenge, I would probably say not absolutely needed. A, because your body doesn't need it, and B, calcium supplements tend to be relatively low quality if you buy them just off the shelf in, say, a supermarket or a regular drugstore or something like that. You might as well, the quality of the calcium is so bad, you might as well walk into your kid's school, find the chalkboard, take a piece of chalk and eat that. It's just about the same kind of stuff. And then, of course, we've got stress as well that we need to focus on. Julie mentioned stress previously. Stress, we say it all the time, and we'll never tire of saying it, it's the enemy of women in menopause. I think we should have a T-shirt printed with that on, Julie, because
Yeah.
I just wear them all the way through a podcast. But yeah, the higher your stress levels, the higher your cortisol levels, the more your bones are going to be under pressure. And so we know it's a bit hackneyed, but taking sort of like 5-10 minutes here, there to do some breathing exercises, to read a book, to actively try and distress, take a hot bath, anything you can. We know women at this stage of life have super, super busy lives. So give yourself that grace of taking 5, 10, 15 minutes every so often. And then we probably don't need to talk about some of the other lifestyle factors, but I'm going to mention them anyway for the hell of it. Okay,
Of
so
course.
smoking, alcohol, processed foods, potentially coffee, they could all be a challenge as well. In fact, not female related, but male related. I had a male client a few years ago who came to me specifically because he knew that I worked with women in menopause, and quite strangely, as a man in his early 40s, he'd been diagnosed with osteoporosis. So he came to see me, and one of the things that his doctor suspected was his love of coffee, bringing it on as an early onset for him as a male. So coffee has some great uses. Make sure it's good quality, and try and be relatively moderate in your intake. 1 or 2 cups a day and earlier in the day is probably about enough. So Julie, shall we just start recapping then and talk about some practical action steps to give people like a little roadmap maybe to start thinking about this?
Sure. I would say the number one thing is to move daily. Even 10 minutes counts. Get up, like we said, walk up and down the stairs, carry something. Don't use the trolley if you can avoid it, if you can carry things in your hands and build up the strength to do that. Eating protein and calcium rich foods consistently, And remember, your bone matrix is made up of a lot of different minerals, not just calcium. So magnesium and protein are essential parts of your bone structure as well. Prioritize sleep and stress reduction. Yes, broken record here. Prioritize sleep and stress reduction. If you need help figuring out how to do that, we are here. Reach out to us. You might want to talk to your general practitioner, your doctor, about doing a DEXA scan, because DEXA is the kind of the gold standard when it comes to doing a bone mineral density scan. DEXA stands for dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. DEXA is much easier.
And that after a glass of
Yeah, exactly. But it's a good idea to get a baseline so that over time you can have it checked occasionally and just know what direction you're heading, so you can head off any potential issues that are coming along as early as possible. So
I
that's what
think
I
key
would
as well
say.
to think in all this is that you don't have to do all this stuff in one go.
Mhm.
But start
No.
prioritizing something. Go for a walk, go to the gym, lift some heavy weights. Lift some heavy weights at home. We've all got stuff lying around the house that is heavy. Even if you don't have, the proverbial dumbbell that's propping open a door somewhere, or a kettlebell in the attic from the last time you started exercising. Most of us do have that kind of stuff. You'll find heavy stuff. You can find heavy books. You can find rocks in the garden. Stick them in your kid's backpack, put them on, and do some squats with that one. So 5-10 minutes a day, absolutely perfect. So that could be one thing you could do. Add in some Greek yogurt somewhere during the day, a nice plateful of that, maybe after dinner before you go to bed, or book in a DEXA scan. So just choose one thing to do, to think about working towards better bone health. If it was me, and I was saying, what is the one thing I would recommend doing, it would certainly be doing some kind of weight-bearing exercise. I think it's absolutely imperative.
Yeah, for sure. Because menopause does shift your bone health, but that doesn't mean it's all downhill. You have a lot of control over this. So your movement, your nutrition, your mindset, your stress reduction, these are all really powerful levers, and you can put them to work for you. So we want to keep our strength and our independence and our freedom, because again, we're talking about a phase of our lives that is a third to a half of our lifespan. So we want to do it feeling great. We want to do it being able to maintain our independence. We want to do it so that we have the freedom to do all of those things that we've been saving for someday. We
Yeah.
can start doing them now.
Yeah. So if today's conversation resonated with you and you'd like some support putting it all into action, we'd love to invite you to book one of our menopause impact assessment sessions. They're 45 minutes long, and in the session we're going to guide you through a scientifically validated symptom survey that's going to help us understand your symptom load, so you've got somewhere to start and know which areas of your health and lifestyle might need some attention. We'll look at your goals, and then we'll help you create a plan for moving forward so you can start feeling better fast. It's not about starting another quick fix program or one size fits all advice. It's about creating a bespoke start to a plan that you can create a body and life you love. It's 45 minutes. Come and join us. Walk away with that plan. You can find out more details at impact.fabulousbeyond40.com, and of course we'll include the link in the show notes. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening. We've got another special guest coming up in a couple of weeks, and we've also got our latest episode of headlines and hot flashes, I think we're calling it. Are we, Julie? Or hot flashes and headlines?
Hot flashes and hot topics. I don't know. We'll work on it.
Yeah. Hot something and hot something. It's the one where we look at all the news around menopause. So that will be coming up in either next week or the week after as well. So thanks for listening. Until next time, it's been James and Julie from Fabulous Beyond 40. Stay strong, stay fabulous, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye.